Story 1. I'm old enough to remember watching Cheney when he was Secretary of Defense under President George H.W. Bush, and when he debated Joe Lieberman as a vice presidential candidate. It is also worth noting that he made his mark in the Ford administration after Nixon resigned. Say what you will about him, but Dick Cheney is a very intelligent, ruthless political operative. Arguably our most powerful vice president ever. Maybe he's being overprotective of his daughter, whom Trump has attacked, but it's probably because he rightly thinks Trump is an idiot who is destroying the Republican Party power structure he spent decades building. Imagine spending your life creating an empire and then watching some petulant moron destroy it all before your eyes. Story 2. There was nothing in the Republican candidate for him. Cheney belongs to that club where Democrat or Republican doesn't really matter. A lot of Republicans are like that. They all hate Trump. Story 3. Neoconservatives were largely not conservative. They were coalition members who were more in favor of an aggressive military posture. It does not shock me that a non-conservative like Cheney would move away from a Republican Party that is more isolationist. Story 4. Did not he shoot somebody in the face and start a war under false pretenses? How is this demon not in jail? It would be a badge of honor not to have his vote. Story 5. If the question, what would make Dick Cheney vote for a Democratic presidential candidate, had been asked 20 years ago, it would have been the most astonishingly ridiculous question anyone could ask. And now we know. Takes a traitor. Seems like an obvious answer. I guess the astonishing part was that no one thought a traitor would get that close to the White House. Twice. And Cheney helped put him there the first time. Story 6. Honestly, probably something similar to reality. The Republican Party went so far off the rails that even establishment conservatives felt that a Democratic vote was in their best interest. Well, either that or the Overton window had shifted so far to the right that the Democratic candidate was Liz Cheney. I'd have probably flipped a coin as to which one it was. Story 7. The anti-war right, a sizable movement already at that time, grew in opposition to Afghanistan and Iraq, eventually taking over the Republican Party. Neoconservative warmongers such as Cheney didn't like this and moved to the Democratic Party. So, basically, that's what happened. Story 8. The Republican candidate is someone that Cheney didn't like and didn't think he could make money off them. Cheney has been nothing but self-serving, and the politics have nothing to do with it. Story 9. It would have just reinforced my belief that the two-party system is a sham. They're all just political elites working to better themselves at the expense of the American people. None of them want to actually help us where it matters, and we're all just pawns that fund the system. But I'm just a normal dude. Story 10. I'm not gonna lie, hearing that I'm voting the same way as Dick Cheney is making me feel like maybe I should sit this one out. Dick Cheney is one of the most evil people I can think of. My morals are in stark opposition to his, and maybe that means that neither candidate is worth my vote. Story 11. I would assume that whatever undemocratic entity Cheney served when he was running the show during the Bush years now had a Democratic candidate because the Republican candidate was some wild card they had no control over. I am not saying this as an endorsement of Trump in any way. Story 12. Because Dick Cheney is deeply entrenched in the establishment, and Trump completely dismantled the power structure that Cheney and his associates created in the late 1900s. Whether you like Trump or dislike him, one thing is probably sure. We all disdain Cheney. Story 13. The ancien regime believes that Trump is the only obstacle to them returning to power. They are unaware that their reign has ended. There is no nostalgia for the Bush-Cheney era. Story 14. The left and the right were always funded by the same wealthy individuals. It was just the illusion of choice. Trump answers to a different group of wealthy individuals. If you look at how friendly the last 4 presidents are, it's not all that surprising. Story 15. There are more military-industrial complex war, profiteering, and money laundering dollars on the table. Papa needs to keep that BlackRock stock hot, and those foreign wars aren't going to start themselves. Trump, that naive Make America Great Again supporter, forgot to start any more wars, running around making peace in the Middle East with the Abraham Accords and in Eastern Europe and the Korean Peninsula and shutting down ISIS and the Iran threat and smashing the Wagner Group and the Houthis. Unbelievable. Story 16. If Dick Cheney voted for a Democratic president in 2024, it would likely mean either a major personal shift in his political beliefs, a dramatic change in the political climate, or an unusual strategic decision given the candidates. Story 17. It shouldn't really surprise anyone. He's a classic foreign policy chicken hawk who deferred his Vietnam draft 5 times but loves military adventurism. Better alignment there with establishment Democrats, given that Trump is one of the only presidents since the Second World War not to start a new foreign adventure. Story 18. I'm still shocked Dick Cheney isn't in prison for lying about weapons of mass destruction and getting 800,000 innocent Iraqis killed, as well as over 3,000 American servicemen, all for nothing except to drive up the value of his Halliburton stock. Story 19. He was an extreme warmonger, so I would guess that the Republican nominee had gotten significant peace deals signed before, and the Democratic Party was expected to bring about endless war across the world. Story 20. His kid was running as a Democrat. He had a large stake in a company that a Democrat was closely involved with. Democrat and Republican ideologies have shifted in different directions. We were at war and he was voting for a strong sitting Democrat, etc. Story 21. I would have just assumed he switched parties. It happened to me, it can happen to big-name politicians as well. In 2004, I would have argued that neoconservatives and interventionist Democrats were not all that dissimilar and would happily work together to basically lead us into wars for profit. That was my chief complaint against the Bush administration back then, and why I opposed them so fervently. This would have further cemented that idea in my mind. My guess would be whoever the Republican is in 2024, they must be someone outside that inner circle of Washington establishment warmongers, so he came out in opposition. Story 22. That the Republican is doing something that goes against Cheney's interests. Cheney is only interested in Cheney. Here is a little clue on how you know I am right. Liz and Dick both said Trump is the most dangerous person for democracy. Dick started a war based on a lie he knowingly told that resulted in 1 million people getting killed, a region destabilized, and allowed ISIS to emerge. Trump has my vote if he is upset with Cheney. Story 23. I would guess that the parties had flip-flopped, as has happened in the past. So, I would have assumed that the Democrats had become the conservative party, and that would be the only reason for Cheney to vote for them. Never in a trillion years would I have guessed that Donald Trump would be the grand old party nominee and that he had 34 felonies under his belt.